of the Cold War. And obviously you wrote about your father's history, left-wing. How did that impact fans at the time? And when the wall fell, when things opened up, was there kind of an outreach from Russian fans that was special for you compared to the other cast?
I'll begin at the end. My character was so kind of apolitical, you know. He didn't really engender any kind of reaction on that level. My fans were from 8 to 13 years old. They wrote in pencil on lined paper, you know, and they thought I was groovy. So that's about as far as that went. So that was never a problem. I just think, you know, the people out there who were anti-Russian just kind of ignored the fact, because, as I say, the character was not very threatening. And you had another question.
But yeah, I was wondering if, well, let me skip ahead for a moment, go to the ear question that I asked a couple of days ago. When it comes to Wrath of Khan, I thought you had the most memorable scene in the movie with the little earwig creature going in for the mind control. How much of your real ear had that slimy thing in it?
Well, because of the danger involved in that scene, that was, after all, that was a stunt, Bobby. And so this ear has been reconstructed. Now they had the little thing, whatever the hell it was, dipped in goo, and they had threaded through my helmet. They drew a hole in my helmet, and so it was on my face. And there was a guy standing above me, pulling it, you know, and so it came up my face. Now, when it came actually to the time when it crawled in my ear, at that juncture, what did we do? Oh, we went to a close-up of a sculpted ear that wasn't mine, and with a hole in the back. And then we pulled it into my ear, again, on this fine filament through that little hole. And as far as what we did when it came out of my ear, we did this in Marine County, and with all of what's his name, the guy from Star Wars. George Lucas. Yeah. So what they did was they put me on a bench that was covered in the same material that the floor was when I fell down initially, but it was, you know, several hundred miles away. When I fell, that was on the lot at Paramount. This was on a bench in Marin County, and again they drew a hole. They drilled a hole in the bench so they could have it. They could start to pull it out of my ear, but so they had an establishing shot of it starting to come out of my ear. And then they cut to yet another shot, which was not to size. This was a disproportionately larger ear, so that they could show the bug as being bigger and more threatening. So the last shot was actually this large sculpted ear and the bug being pulled out. So it wasn't very painful at all.
You wrote some notes for Wrath of Khan and sent them to the director. They were published in your autobiography. What kind of changes did your writings make to Wrath of Khan?
I don't remember. I do remember that I was that Howard Bennett, our producer. I can't remember why he did this. Oh, I know why. The first thing I did when I read the script was I was shocked that they had Spock dying in the second act. You know, this is one of your two main characters. It just doesn't happen that way, unless you're doing the flashbacks. So I called him and said, I got to talk to you, Mr. Bennett. He said, I don't talk to actors before we shoot. I said, it's not about acting. So I came in and I talked to him and the regular, he was the executive producer and the regular producer. And I said, you can't have Spock dying in the second act. And I was very emphatic. And I guess they were impressed enough to do a rewrite. So when the rewrite came back, I realized that Khan had lines like, I remember. And he didn't remember me because I wasn't in the first time that he played Khan, and I wasn't in the show. But you think I was going to tell them that? I mean, it's a case of professional responsibility and ethics and personal survival. We all know where I went. In fact, I started to make up something. I did a lot of conventions after that where people say, feeling very proud of themselves, people would get up and say, how could Spock have recognized you in Star Trek II when you weren't in Star Trek II? Very defiantly, waiting for me to fumble and, trip over my own feet, trying to come up with an explanation. And I said, on the contrary, Chekhov was in Star Trek II. He was working on the third deck behind the boiler room. And he was ill with a condition called Malapropsy's malady, which was kind of a 23rd century version of Montezuma's Revenge. And he was ensconced in the bathroom and had been there for hours and hours while poor Mr. Khan, his genetically engineered kidneys about to explode, pounded pitifully on the bathroom door, begging to be let in. Until finally the door opened, Chekhov stepped out and he said, your face, I will never forget.
Is there any other of the original series storylines that you wish you had seen continued in a film?
Actually, I think they did a better job. Are you talking about my character, or just talking about this?
In general, either way.
I really didn't think too much in general. I was just thinking about my character. I don't know. I thought the story, City on the Edge of a River, was such a terrific story. I don't know what else they could have done. It had a perfect ending, very tragic, very sad ending. But I so enjoyed that if they could have come up with something additionally for that story, it might be very, very interesting. I don't really, that's a good question, because I don't really remember thinking about that. So let's go on to the next one.
I read your notes that detailed your vision for an end to much of the main cast, a death for Scotty and Uhura and Captain Kirk, and ultimately I think it was Spock and Bones that would end up walking away after a big battle with what you described as an alien that was basically the precursor to Alien, basically Prometheus kind of story. Looking back, is there a way that you'd like to see Chekhov have ended on film?
Well, I don't think so, because I think that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do all of the films and attend conventions like this. But I thought that if a character was going to be killed off, I would certainly like it to be better constructed and better done than what they did to Captain Kirk.
Oh, amen to that.
That was such a sorry excuse for him. He had to know, and I mean this seriously, he had to know that Berman didn't give a damn, about our cast, and particularly about Kirk. I mean, he took the most undramatic, non-lyric, unemotional way he could possibly do it. It was really, I felt, an insult. I mean, Kirk, you've got to give Kirk an ending, do him, and that wasn't done.
In my mind, he's still in that nebula because he didn't want to leave, and that was just a clone Kirk that ended up falling out.
Right.
Tell us about your venture into Babylon 5.
Well, Babylon 5 is unquestionably the most fun I've had as an actor on television. There's certain values that, that involve my experience on Star Trek that I'm extremely pleased about. I'm extremely pleased that we've had such an enduring and supportive audience for Star Trek. It's really quite remarkable, and it's meant a great deal to me personally and vocationally. That Star Trek has endured for such a long period of time, and it has led to some other professional experiences. But for the most part, I was sitting up there and hitting the green button when I felt envious, and the purple button when I was in a rage, and the blue button when I was depressed, So there wasn't a whole lot for Chekhov to do. Aye, aye, sir. Aye, aye, sir. Aye, aye, sir. There's just so many ways you can do that. So it wasn't aesthetically as rewarding as it might otherwise have been.
I don't think anybody else could have said enemy vessel ahead and been taken seriously.
Yeah, that was certainly my major achievement. But B5 was a terrific experience in almost every way it could have been. I loved working with the actors. It was really a troupe. It wasn't a caste system. When we were doing Star Trek, it was really a caste system. And that was much a fault of the generation as it was anything else. And there are other things that it was. But certainly the fact that we had 3 actors who were given credit before the titles, and the others were weaved in to the end titles between the guest actors, and which showed reflected a certain lack of respect, but not vindictively. It was just the way things went, and we were there, and it was understood that we were moving furniture, and not moving furniture, but we were moving furniture, and Bill felt that way very much, that there were 3 stars, and then there was the rest of us. So he wasn't there to support us and be a voice on our side. But the people on B5 were just terrific. Bruce and Jerry and Mira and everybody, they were just terrific. And the first time I stepped on the soundstage, they were contemporaries and peers, and I was one of the guys. And certainly some of that had to do with having been on Star Trek for so long. You acquire a kind of patina that goes with being on a show that long. So that's true. But everybody, just the way they conducted themselves with each other, was I thought quite wonderful. And you grow to appreciate something like that when you had a situation where there were frustrations involved with relationships with other cast members. Additionally, every time I came on the show, I had something to do. It was so nice. And I felt significant and important to this story. And as a consequence, I also got along very well with Joe Straczynski and the other members of the staff, the production staff. So it was just a great experience. I loved being part of it.
In your autobiography, you describe being a very insecure young man, not sure what your abilities are, but you loved acting. In fact, you describe your greatest performance as being 12 years old and playing a king of some kind. And then you end up at acting school with James Caan, Dabney Coleman, and Christopher Lloyd. Tell us about the experience working with them, or learning with them.
Well, I'll tell you an experience that is interesting because it doesn't include any of that. I was broke. I was in drama school and I was totally broke. I was living literally on $75 a month, which was tuna fish sandwiches every single day. And then I had a friend who worked on construction. I had known him since we were about 8 years old. His name was Peter McGee. And I went to Peter one day and I said, what's the chance of one of those heavy 8-pound rivets falling from the building? And he says, it happens all the time. And I said, is it possible that it could land somewhere where it could hit somebody? He says, yeah. He said, yes. I said, okay, let me think about this. So I went to Dabney, who was very upset. No, you can't do anything like that. No, he was very stern about it. Jimmy says, what? You know, and Kristen just laughed. So I went to a first-year student, and they're all way too young to know this guy. But he was a beat poet in the village, and he was named Moondoggy. And he was also a first-year student at the Playhouse. And I asked him, I said, would you be my eyewitness for $100? Because I'm going to try to pull off a little scam. And he said, hey man, that's groovy, yeah. Have some marijuana first. So you know, to this day, I can't believe some of the things I did at that time. It could really be interpreted as being very self-destructive, but I thought it was kind of an adventure. So I went to my friend Peter and I asked him to get me one of these rivets, and he did. And the three of us, Peter, Moondoggy, whose real name was Hugh Romney, and we met for lunch. Peter slipped me the rivet under the table. And what I had rehearsed with Hugh was that I was going to step off the curb, and he was going to be behind me and see me fall. And you know, and then I had the rivet under my armpit, and I was just going to let it. And I had a jacket on. I was going to just let it fall. And I was going to scream. So that was the plan. But this cool guy, Hugh, Moondoggy, he panicked. And his job was simply to walk behind me. And I came out of the bar because I went into a bar with a newspaper and I cut my cheek. So that, you know, I had some evidence of the thing hitting me. Is this neurotic or what? And, but he got nervous and he jumped off into the street before me. So he was halfway across 6th Avenue, because that's where we were doing this, when I started across the street. So I had no other choice, so I did my scream and I fell down, the blood was dripping off my chin. And he came running back, and he looked at me and said, somebody do something. Just don't stand there. Now I really was screaming. I was like, oh my God, this guy is so bad. But they ended up taking me up to the hospital in the Bronx where my brother was an intern. I hadn't told my brother that I was going to do this. But the story is, they did all these. I did tell him when I got up there, and I said, "No, I'm faking all this." He said, "Oh shit, you got to go through with it." So I had all the X-rays taken and all that stuff, and then I was sent to an attorney because that was the whole idea, to go to an attorney. And the attorney said, "You know, if you had stayed out of school for a couple of weeks after you had this accident, we could probably get a lot more money for you." But I had to go back because we were having a showcase, and I needed to be available. So I got a sum of money that would put me in jail if they knew. It wasn't a vast amount. There was enough, you know, to do that. And of course, by now, Hugh was ecstatic, and He says, well, we can do this in Chicago, we can do this in Boston. And I bought a car, I bought a really terrible little English car called an Anglia, which cost me the amount of money that I got. Within 6 months, I had to throw it into the car. Oh, so that is really my first experience with theater. It was street theater, you know. And the first time I actually had an audience to perform before.
I'm going to ask one more question, but I'd ask folks in the audience who want to ask a question get lined up at the two microphones here on either aisle. You have a Kickstarter project coming up. Tell us what that's all about.
Well, I'm not sure I know what it's all about. There's one called Cowboys and Engines. And somebody said that was insulting. It's not insulting. You're not going to, you know, it's not cowboys and Indians, it's cowboys and engines. Two different words entirely, you know. But it's, what punk, something, what do they call it?
Steampunk?
Yeah. So it's about the Old West, and at the same time, there's an involvement of a professor who has created a kind of a time machine. And I play the professor. It's not a very big part, but it's interesting. It's more interesting than the roles that I have been offered over the internet. I've been offered some roles that were just awful roles. I mean, I was offered one where I was going to be one of the principal roles, but it required that I have my head cut off and that a dog eats it. I said, I don't want to be in a movie where a dog eats my head. That's a little too grotesque for me. Then there was another one that I was told by a couple of the actors who signed up for it. And again, the producer wanted to give me one of the leads. And he says, it's very funny. It's a very funny movie. And I read it, and I read it the second time, and I didn't see any humor in it. I didn't see anything that was remotely funny. And I called up Robert Ricardo, who's a bright guy, and I know he had been invited to participate. And unbeknownst to the producer, he had already in his own mind turned it down. And I asked him if he thought it was funny. He says, no, there's nothing funny here. So there's another kind of role I was offered. And then I was offered above the title movie, independent again, that made a political statement that I couldn't tolerate. If it was a political statement that ultimately is shown to be wrong, shown to be reactionary, then I could have done it. But this guy who wrote it really supported this statement, and the message of the movie was go away from this movie thinking that this is the way that things should be. So I had to turn that one down. I have no idea where we started with this.
Let's go on here to an audience question. We'll start over here.
Hello.
Hello.
What was one of your favorite experiences in acting? Like, just made you so happy to be an actor?
That's interesting. And the answer is a little strange. Do you guys know who Charles Manson was? Well, they were looking all over Hollywood for somebody to play Charles Manson, and they couldn't find him. And then a casting director had me in, and I met the director, and he says, "I know you as a writer." He says, I had written something that he'd given to Marlon Brando, Marlon Brando, and he was a close friend of Marlon Brando's. He says, I don't know you as an actor. But he says, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a chance. So study the script, come back, don't do a voice, there was something else he didn't want, and don't memorize any of the lines. Just come back and do it. Well, there was a documentary in theaters, and particularly in the drive-ins, at that very moment, about Charles Manson and the family. So we went to see that. I took a tape recorder with me, and I recorded all of Manson's words, and I took the time to memorize the lines. And I came back, and the director said, well, whenever you, I said, I needed a second to get ready. He says, okay, whenever you're ready. He started writing something, you know, and I went into the character. And it was one of those extraordinary moments that an actor has, because he literally dropped the pen and stopped and looked up at me and said, my God, that's Charles Manson. That's Charles Manson. Well, I was very pleased. I know I'm talking about a psychopathic murderer. But I just felt so good about the audition. And as you all know, who know Charles Manson, I didn't get to play the part. They had indeed exhausted the possibilities in Los Angeles, but there were still other actors in New York. And Elia Kazan, who was a brilliant director and one of the hottest directors in town in New York, he recommended the chap that played the part, and got a recommendation from Elia Kazan. That's pretty much, that's the end of the story. The footnote is that the actor was very good, and that made it all okay for me because he was very good. If he hadn't been, I would have felt very insulted.
For the sake of the audience, I won't transmit the question telepathically, but with the 20th anniversary of Babylon 5 coming up, if you could drop little City Alpha earbuds into Mr. Stravinsky's ear for another Lost Tales DVD, would you like to see a side horror story in there? And if so, would Bester make another appearance?
Well, the 25th anniversary is coming up?
20th, sorry.
So when is that?
For Babylon 5, the 20th anniversary coming up?
Is it 2002?
No.
22?
I was told it was this year.
What?
I was told it was this year, and
Oh, so you don't really know.
That's what I've been captain from the day they first aired the first episode.
See, that's how ugly rumors spread. Actually, I got along very well with Joe, and he was supposed to do a spin-off series from Babylon 5. And they shot several episodes. And he wrote one for me. It was like the 8th or 9th episode. I got the script, I memorized the lines, and then the show was canceled. This was, the spin-off series. And the story how it involved Bester was the telepath wars. We lost the telepath wars.
Yes.
And I'm on the run. And I'm on the run throughout space, and I land on a planet, and they're looking for somebody, and we make a bargain that I will tell them where this person is if they would give me a shuttlecraft. So I need some locomotion. And they didn't think I could do any harm with the shuttlecraft. So they gave me that, they caught the bad guy. And the last scene, as I go off in my shuttlecraft, is going through space, and then, however you want to envision it, you pan up, and you see this huge mothership, and it says Psychor on it. So all my guys are in that ship. So the obvious implication is that we're not done, and that we're going to return. I thought it was a terrific idea, and I knew that he intended to continue to use the character. That's as far as I went with it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for being here today. Speaking of the Alfred Bester character arc, I actually had a couple